Hello, everybody, and welcome to Patriots Leftovers. I'm Alex Barth. He is Evan Lazar. The second episode of Patriots Leftovers, where we go through all of our leftover thoughts about the most recent Patriots game, the things that have been tumbling around inside our brain for the past 24 hours. So before we get started with Evan, I just want to let everybody know this edition of Patriots Leftovers is brought to you by betonline.ag. Visit their website. Use the promo code CLNS50 for a 50% welcome bonus. It's also brought to you by CBS Interactive. Download the CBS Sports app and watch CBS Sports HQ today. Well, Evan, I gotta say, I do feel like a show like this kind of functions better after a loss than a win.
Yeah.
So let's see how this goes. Though I want to say, do you remember when we were in like middle school and high school, and teacher would go over a project or paper with you, and they'd give you the compliment sandwich, right? They start out with something good you did, and they'd get to the critiques, then finish with something good. Yeah. I want to turn this show into a compliment sandwich of the Patriots last night. There's plenty of critique to get into, but as I said on Twitter, this will not be the world is burning, the sky is falling, it's all over, the dynasty is dead sort of show. We're going to approach this realistically, we're going to approach this logically, and we're going to see what we can come up with. So, Evan, start us off with something positive.
I think offensively, the Patriots might have found an identity last night. They went away from all the two-back sets, all the heavy personnel with multiple tight ends and a fullback in the backfield. They played 11 personnel for the entire game, start to finish. They ran no huddle 52% of the time, and they really just went pace and space. You know, they spread the field, they hurried things up to the line of scrimmage, and there was a point in that game, and some of the Baltimore Ravens defenders, Marlon Humphrey actually went on a radio show today and said it, they couldn't stop the Patriots. The Patriots offense was unstoppable there from the second to basically until the third quarter when Julian Edelman fumbled. There were 3 or 4 drives in a row there where the Patriots moved the ball at will and pretty much did whatever they wanted. So I think that going forward, those 3 wide receiver sets, spreading the field, attacking defenses more from a spread formation where you can run the football against some lighter boxes. You don't have to move as many big mass bodies in the middle of the field to get the running game going. You can throw the ball to the playmakers you do have, Mohamed Sanu, Julian Edelman, Philip Dorsett, hopefully N'Keal Harry here shortly. And you go from there. And I really think that last year was last year. This year is this year, right? It's a classic Belichickism. Right. And last year, they were a 2-back team. They were 21 personnel with James Devlin, and we're going to bring the fullback at you, and we're going to hit you in the mouth. This team has to be different, and I think last night they kind of figured that out.
So I'm going to kind of piggyback off that for my point. And this is something, I'll be honest, I'm stealing this take from Teddy Bruschi. He tweeted this after the game last night. I was thinking it. He tweeted it. He knows a little bit more about this stuff than me. So I'm going to assume it's a good take here. I think last night needed to happen if the Patriots face the Ravens in January. Especially, you mentioned them learning their identity offensively, which is absolutely true. And I actually thought the offense, and specifically Tom Brady, had one of their best games of the year last night, minus 1 fumble. And it's a big fumble, and we'll get to that in a bit. But even on the defensive side of the ball, I think they saw the limitations. They saw their strengths were more emphasized, the limitations were more emphasized. And I just think with an offense like that and an athlete like Lamar Jackson, it doesn't matter how many reps you do in practice. It doesn't matter who the practice squad quarterback is, the scout team quarterback is, none of it. I think you have to really see it and experience it. And you kind of saw it in that game where the Patriots started to stop the Ravens. The middle 2 quarters, they had that Ravens offense locked down. So they've seen it. They've taken the Ravens' best punch. And now it's on, not only is it on tape, it's on tape against their personnel. And they can see it and make their adjustments and start getting this thing figured out if and when, and I think it's when, not if, there's a rematch of this game in January. Again, like Bruschi said, I think this had to happen 5 times in the Brady-Belichick era has a team beaten the New England Patriots twice in the same season. None since 2015, and if you want, you can put a little asterisk on that because the Patriots were not the same team going into Denver for that second matchup. They were missing like half the roster. Right. So, you know, I don't want to go too far with this because this is really projecting forward and the Ravens look good, but we saw how the Ravens acted after that game. We all did, right? It's kind of like how the Jaguars acted last year after their win. And don't get me wrong, beating the Patriots, especially this team, the way the Ravens just did is a huge accomplishment. And they should be proud of that. But you can't do that and then forget about the rest of the season? And now do the Ravens rest on their laurels? And if there is a playoff matchup, do they come in a little overconfident? I'm not saying their overconfidence could be the difference, but I'll go back to the thesis here. I think last night needed to happen for the Patriots to see what it would take to beat the Ravens in January, and now they have seen that. Let's get into some of the struggles, though, from last night, some of the specific X's and O's struggles. The first thing that stood out to me, Evan, we talked about it during the week. The Patriots needed to go big up front. So we thought, right? We speculated that a big defensive front of Adam Butler, Lawrence Guy, Danny Shelton. They came out with that, and it didn't work. It really did not work. And I don't remember the last time, something seemed so obvious, a strategy seemed so obvious for a Belichick team. It didn't pay off. It didn't. They put speed on the field, though. They get a little smaller, and suddenly they're containing Lamar Jackson. Why didn't the big guys work? And was the switch to speed working sort of a fluke, or is that the strategy here going forward?
Well, I thought that they really should be playing more speed on the field. The Ravens' issue is against the Ravens. So if you try to match them power for power, it looks like a losing proposition against that offensive line. That is a mean, tough, physical offensive line led by Marshall Yanda, who played his butt off in that game last night and had one of the best offensive line games I've seen all year on tape. Just absolutely demolishing guys. So that going from there to the speed thing, I think the speed thing was more on passing downs. They got them into third down situations. They put more defensive backs on the field to spy Lamar Jackson. Now, back to really the crux of this whole thing is the run game, right? Why they weren't able to just stop Lamar Jackson. One thing that you said about them seeing this once before or once now so that they can be prepared for it in January. One thing that really stood out, and we can get into the X's and O's in a second about the run game in general, but the mesh point of the read option plays, how quickly Lamar can give or pull that, and how deceptive he is with that. He is one of the best. He's one of the best option guys handling the ball that I have ever seen. And I couldn't figure out if he had the ball or if he didn't. So just imagine playing against it. If you're a Patriots linebacker, if you're Landon Roberts or Dante Hightower or Jamie Collins, imagine trying to predict, does he have it, does he not, and reading that play out. And then it hits so hard once he does decide, to hand it to Ingram or to run it himself, that if there's even a moment's hesitation of who has the ball, he's gone. So the mesh point work of Lamar Jackson, the mesh point is obviously when he decides, is he going to hand it off or is he going to keep it? That is an amazing, amazing skill that he has developed. You can say what you will about him as a passer, because last night the passing was good, but it certainly wasn't what won them the game. Right.
A lot of yards after catch. A lot of throws to the flat, yards after catch last night.
Yeah. So they gained 111 yards after the catch out of the 162 or something like that he threw for. So almost 60%, 70%, and you do the math of his yards total yards passing came after the catch. So that's a pretty wonky stat. But back to the running game. I think the biggest thing that we wanted to talk about here today was just the fact that the Patriots, their two-gap system that they use up front with their defensive line in this 3-4 system got exposed by the Ravens. Yeah. And what the Ravens did was they came out with a gap option scheme where they had Lamar running the read option, but instead of running the read option with their typical zone stuff, they ran it with pulling guards and with duo and with getting up to the second level and running gap schemes, man blocking power schemes. And it really just threw the Patriots off, because when you two-gap, if you got guys that are getting blown off the ball and then you get defenders to the second level where the linebackers can't get off those blocks and now they can't scrape or they can't read the running back or read the ball carrier and meet them in the hole, that's when you start to get gashed. That's when you get those big runs. So my fear is that they watched early on in that first 20 plays or so that the Ravens scripted. They watched them run the ball right down the field with gap runs with the read option, and they didn't adjust to a one-gap system. So I kind of wonder, have they pigeonholed themselves here into just being a two-gapping 3-4 defense? Do they have the ability to one-gap? Do they have the ability to game plan wrinkle going into the game or even adjust mid-game into more of a one-gapping scheme? Because that is what would have worked last night. If they had thrown the Ravens the one gap at the second half, it really would have thrown them off, and they just didn't seem to have that option. If you go back to the Super Bowl quickly against the Rams, The Patriots one gap that entire game against the wide zone scheme. Remember Belichick saying in the NFL Films thing, keep getting vertical, keep getting vertical. That's what he was talking about. He was talking about penetration and getting upfield.
But isn't it hard to do that against Lamar Jackson?
I actually
Given
think that's
what
the
he
way
can do
you
with his
have to
legs?
defend Lamar because
Okay.
the reason why, so when you run an even front, right? So if they put 4 down defensive linemen and you put everybody in a gap, so you cover the entire gap in the box, right? Then you can one gap and everybody gets a gap. It's not a situation where you're holding and you're pressing blockers and you're two gapping and you can go to one side or the other side of you depending on where the runner goes. And you kind of have to read it out, right? And feel it out. With this, everybody just gets one gap and you can shoot the gaps and you can try to meet Lamar in the backfield instead of letting him get ahead of steam and then letting him make cuts off of blocks that are down the field. You can hopefully get him behind the line of scrimmage or slow him down behind the line of scrimmage. I really think that that's going to have to be the answer if they play them again, is aggressive attacking defense. You can't wait back. You can't sit back against this guy. You just can't. He's just too fast. Right. And Ingram is too good of a runner to just sit back and kind of scrape and allow him to kind of do what he's going to do and cut off of blocks. I think you got to attack these guys.
And someone reminded me of, and Evan's frozen right now, so we'll see if we can get that fixed real quick. There it is. To a lesser extent, but for the college football fans out there, the hippo formation that Wisconsin runs, where they put 8 offensive linemen on the field and then their biggest backs, and they essentially just will their way down the field. They plow their way down the field with size, and it's kind of a speed version of that. Is what?
Well, this is the veer. They're running the veer, which is an old school triple option.
Right.
We're going back to like the 60s or maybe the early 70s, and you run the veer. You have multiple tight ends on the field. And what makes it confusing is that you can do so many different things still out of that. The quarterback can keep the ball. He can hand it to the running back. You can throw it to the tight ends. You can move the tight ends all around the formation and move them around pre-snap and really confuse defenses. So that they're running a version of the veer, and it's so different from what everybody else in the NFL is running that, like you said at the beginning of the show, until you play against it, you really don't know what to expect because you've never seen anything like it at this level.
So let me ask you this. So 2-part question here. And I think this is the big question you have to take away from last night. And I've already talked about the Ravens putting things on tape. But there's now a recipe on tape against Patriots defense.
Right.
The asterisk on that is it's a very unique recipe that requires some very unique ingredients. I'm talking about Lamar Jackson. There really is no other guy like him in the league, at least not playing quarterback. So two parts here. Part one, are there other teams that can replicate this against the Patriots, and would that be successful? And then part 2 is, have the Patriots proven they're not actually a game plan defense because they couldn't defend this style of play and they have to play a certain way to be effective?
Well, I'm worried about part 2. I'll put it to you that way because I don't know.
Is part 2 only relevant if there is another team that can play like this?
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. So let me answer your questions in order. So first one was about replicating this blueprint. I think it's next to impossible for another team to replicate it. And it's because it's not just Lamar. So you have to have an elite running quarterback. You have to have a really good back that can run gap and zone like Mark Ingram can.
And it has to be a big back, too.
And a big guy that's physical, right, and that can be patient and read out these runs and read off blocks and do all that kind of stuff. So we're not talking about a one-cut-and-go back here. We're talking about a patient runner. The third thing that you need multiple pass-catching tight ends. It's not just one tight end that they use in this game. They use Andrews, they use Hurst, and they use Boyle. So you need 2 or 3 pass-catching tight ends in order to have an effect on it. Now, the one team, and they don't have the elite running quarterback element. I don't know if there's a team on the Patriots schedule that are going to do it exactly like that. Now, Philadelphia, they do run a lot of 2 tight end packages, right? They have Goddard and they have Ertz. They have running backs that can do what in theory, what Baltimore did, and they have an offensive line that can run you over. So that's a tough matchup. Wentz is athletic, but he's not Lamar, right?
And
so
I would say, given his history, I wouldn't expect the Ravens to be willing to have him, running to contact 15 to 20 times a game.
Right. So they can run read option with Carson Wentz, but if the Eagles run read option with Carson Wentz and Wentz keeps it, it's not the same effect. right? If he
Right.
keeps it in you and you let him run, maybe he does it once, twice, three times, but he's not going to break off a 33-yard gainer like Lamar did last night, 32-yard gainer, whatever it was, on a read option play. It's just, unless it's wide open, he's just not going to do that. He doesn't have that kind of athleticism. But I do think the Eagles can do
real quick. So,
like that.
Because you just remind me of this. This was on the broadcast last night. Chris Collinsworth was raving about how when you run the quarterback, you get the extra blocker and the running back, and why don't teams do it anymore? He said, even if Tom Brady was my quarterback, I would still run him 3 or 4 times a game to get the effect of that play.
Yeah, well,
idiotic.
Okay,
right?
Yeah, no,
okay, I just wanted to throw that out.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun what Lamar is doing, right? It's old school. It's power football. It's truly the veer and triple option kind of morphed into one, and it's really cool. The first couple of plays of the game that they ran, I want to say it was the third or the fourth play on that opening drive. They ran an old school speed option, and he ran out of the option, and they pitched it.
That was right in the red zone, I think, wasn't it?
I don't think so. I think it was. They made 2 big plays in a row on that opening drive. One was the pop pass to Hollywood Brown coming around on the jet sweep, and the other was a speed option. When's the last time an NFL team has run a speed option in an NFL game? It's
as an old school fan, I do love seeing it.
Baltimore is the only team that's going to do that against the Patriots. So I think that it's a really difficult kind of recipe to replicate in that respect. Now, the Patriots do play some mobile quarterbacks coming up. They have Dak Prescott on the schedule. They, of course, have Deshaun Watson on the schedule. Patrick Mahomes, we'll see how mobile he is when he comes back. He's not Lamar or any of those 3 guys that I named first, but he is a little bit mobile. So there is that element of it. But I think the biggest thing is what you said was number 2 to get to that point. I'm concerned that the game plan defense that we always hear about in New England, at least in the front 7 on the defensive line, they can game plan defense in the secondary with the best of them, right? They have the talent, they have the versatility to do that. The defensive line, Danny Shelton, Adam Butler, Lawrence Guy, Dietrich Wise, Byron Coward. That's a 3-4 team. Who's your 4-3 end in that situation? And do you have 2 of them? Do you have 2 of them?
If we're being honest.
Right. You have Dietrich Wise, who I think can be a 4-3 end pretty easily. Yeah. That might actually be his natural position. But who's the other one? Right? We don't have that guy. So without that guy, you can't go 4 down linemen. It just doesn't make any sense to do it. And if you can't do that, you can one gap from a 3-4. It's doable. It's not impossible. But this is the defensive front. You're going to either be a 3-4 or they're going to run that 2 down lineman front that they run that's gotten run all over by teams that commit to running the football against it.
And just to go back through some of the quarterbacks you named, if anybody can replicate this, or come close enough to replicate it to give the Patriots troubles, I think it's going to be Dallas, because they have the quarterback. Yeah. They have the big back, Ezekiel Elliott. The other thing is, Philly's offensive line is pretty good. Kansas City's offensive line is a mess. We all know what that Dallas offensive line is. And if you get...
But they're rolling, they're healthy. If they have Tyron Smith and they have La'el Collins, their tackles, those are their tackles that are both very, maybe the best players at their positions right now.
Right. If you get Dak and Zeke rolling behind that offensive line, that could be a problem for the Patriots. Here's kind of an obscure point I want to hit on. I was thinking about this earlier today, and a lot of people want to bring up, because I want to dispel some of this sky is falling stuff.
Yeah.
Always the optimist I am. Yeah. Everybody wants to point to the fact that the Ravens just beat the crap out of the Patriots, and the Browns beat the crap out of the Ravens.
Oh, that's such
what does that say?
Stupid.
What does that say about the Patriots and the Browns are such a mess right now? I would say the Browns are a better team than people realize given their record. And I want to ask you this. If you look at 1 to 53 on the roster from an individual talent point of view, who has the more talented roster? Is it the Ravens or the Browns? Because it's awfully close. It is awfully close.
Okay, well, can I also just say, I hate this freaking argument, right? I hate this logic.
I'm trying to
this
dispel it.
Transitive property is it's ridiculous. First of all, like the week-to-week fluctuations in the NFL are so severe, right? Like 1 week you can have a team. Right now, Monday Night Football is going on. I'm pretty sure the Giants are giving Dallas a game. 2 weeks ago, Dallas lost to the New York Jets, the flipping Jets, and then they went home and they
lost to the Dolphins.
And they blew out the Philadelphia Eagles. in that primetime game last week. So you're going to tell me that when you look at that kind of arc and you look at the Ravens arc, and look at the Patriots, for example, are the Patriots the same team that they were in week 4 in Buffalo? Are they the same team?
No.
Not at all. They have different pieces. Everything, different injuries, different things come and go. They have Sanu now instead of Gordon. They have a lot of differences. So looking a month in the NFL season is might as well be like 25 games in an NBA season, right? It's such a big time frame to kind of go back and say, well, the Ravens got blown out by the Browns and the Patriots lost to the Ravens. The Ravens aren't actually that good because the Browns beat them 5 weeks ago. I mean,
but
what kind of
the
logic?
Patriots blew out the Browns, who blew out the Ravens, and get stuck in a loop. But again, to say that the Patriots don't have the talent to run with the Ravens, I think the Browns are a more talented team than the Ravens are. I actually do. You got 2 of the best receivers in the game in Odell Beckham and Jarvis.
They're differently made.
But again, if you just look at it as pure talent, right? Add up all the Madden ratings. And I know this is a super obscure way to go about it, and it's not very academic, so you'll have to pardon me on that one. But in terms of roster talent, I think they're about even. The difference to me is you have one of the best coaches in the game in Harbaugh with the Ravens, and that staff is fantastic, and Greg Roman versus, I don't know if we can still call Freddie Kitchens a coach, but
almost
whatever Freddie Kitchens, right. Freddie Kitchens is trying his best.
Yeah.
So that to me is the difference there. And how the Browns beat the Ravens so badly, I'd have to go back and watch that game closer. I don't know. But that take to me, the Browns blew out the Ravens, so the Patriots are screwed. That take holds no merit in my world.
It's nonsense. It's just, like I said, it's the NFL season's obviously only 16 games. So we're talking about a fourth of the season ago. A fourth of the season, the NBA season's 20 games. Right. So basically what you're saying is that because this team X lost to team Y 20 games ago in an NBA season, or how many games is that in an MLB season? My God.
Well, so I was about to say the Nationals were 11 games under 500 in mid-May, which I believe is about a quarter of the way through the season.
Yeah.
The Nationals were 11 under 500, and it's a different sport. But again, right. that is the dumbest narratives to come out of this game for me are Lamar Jackson's elite. I think he's only elite as a runner. He did not wow me throwing the ball last night at all. He didn't. It was all yards after the great play design. I was more wowed by the scheme than Lamar itself.
Right, but the reason why this scheme works is because of Lamar.
But it's because of the way Lamar can run. The reason the scheme works the way it works has nothing to do with his arm.
The Ravens coaching staff deserves all the credit in the world for the creativity
that's what I'm saying. Greg Roman should be a head coach next year. With Tua coming in the draft, that could be a perfect pairing. Think about that.
Yeah, well, I don't know if Tua's not the runner that Lamar is. But regardless.
He's the runner. Okay. Anyway, the dumbest takes for me came out of last night. The Lamar one, whatever, that's my beef. The Browns Ravens take, and the take that the Patriots defense is an elite. Even somebody pointed out last night, the Baltimore Ravens in 2000 allowed a 30-point game around the middle of the season. That 0-2 Bucs defense had a 45-point performance one week. Like, you trip up and it happens.
Bears gave up, I think, over 30 points in a game.
Right.
The 85 Bears, excuse me.
I'm not. They certainly, there was a weakness that was exposed and it needs to be addressed. I'm not saying that I'm just going to write this game off for the defense as a fluke and move on. There's a weakness that needs to be addressed, but especially with the bye week now, and we'll get into that in 1 second. That's going to be our final point. But with the bye week now, is there anybody, forget in the NFL right now, in the history of the game, who is better at going through, finding the weakness, and covering it up than Bill Belichick? And that's where, we bring together the compliment sandwich. And Bill even said it. He has a lot of tape to go through. There's a lot to fix. They generally get this thing fixed. Yeah. Now, it's not the past. It's the present. Could be another year, but they generally get these kind of things fixed. All right. So, like I said, the bye's coming up. They got 2 weeks before Philly. And what is give me a Bill Belichick to-do list, the 3 most important things for him to focus on during the bye week?
Well, I think the number one thing has to be the run defense. They got to figure out a way to stop the run without putting 8 guys in the box, even though they did that some last night and they still couldn't stop the run. So they got to figure out a way to stop the run. I think what they need to do is they need to be more scheme versatile. They need to be able to do more than one thing, right? Yeah. You just can't sit there against a team that has as good of a rushing attack as the Baltimore Ravens do and just two-gap the entire game and put your linebackers in the bubbles and put them off the line of scrimmage and expect them to come up and make plays when they're getting blocked and they're getting guys in their faces. They need to figure out a way that when that's not working, which it didn't work right off the bat, that opening drive, right. They went right down the field running the football against them. As soon as it didn't work right away, they had no adjustment to it. They needed to figure out something else to do, and it wasn't there. So they need to become more versatile as a front and figure out how they can go about stopping these types of rushing attacks. Because now that it's on tape that you can beat the Patriots running the football with gap schemes, that's going to be all that teams are going to do for a while against New England until they prove they can stop it. Right. Philadelphia's got a great offensive line. They have a great scheme. They're going to run the ball right down the Patriots' throats to start that game to see if New England's fixed their issues up front. So that's where I would start with number one. Number two, I think it's a combination of getting N'Keal Harry and Isaiah Wynn healthy and back on the field and just figuring out the best course of action for this offensive line moving forward. How can they, if it's just Wynn coming back and they think they can just plug and play him in at left tackle and this thing will get better, that will be great. And I hope that's the case. But overall, they need to block better on the offensive line. They just need to get some better production out of those guys. Now, last night, Shaq Mason, Marcus Cannon, and Joe Thuney all had great games. They actually probably had their three best games of the season individually all in the same game. Cannon especially was flat out awesome, dominated really in the run game especially. He had a 93.5 PFF grade, which is elite. So he had a really good game last night, and Mason had a really good game. After starting a little bit shaky, he had a holding call early on. He really turned out to have a very good game in the final 3.5 quarters. So the offensive line, I think, has the potential when Wynn comes back to kind of get, turn this around pretty dramatically. Like, I think they could go from a weakness on the team to a strength on the team if they can keep Wynn out there. But if they can't keep Wynn out there, they're going to have to figure out a way to make it work with Newhouse. That's.
Although I thought Newhouse looked okay last night. I think that
Newhouse is not the problem. Like, Newhouse individually is not the problem on his own. He's not good, right? Like, we all can tell that just from the eye test that he's not good. But it's unfair to blame him.
I will say, if he can turn in the game he turned in last night, the rest of the season, they'll be all right. He was good enough last night, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens don't have an elite pass rush. Udon's a good player, but he's not Myles Garrett. He's not, one of those types of guys. But, Newhouse was fine. I think it's unfair to say that Newhouse is the only reason why the blocking stinks, right? He's certainly not the only guy that's to blame here.
So I think for me, real quick, 3 things they need to work on during the bye. Top 3 things. The run defense, like you mentioned. I would say getting N'Keal Harry and Mohamed Sanu 100% integrated. Now, after last night, it looked like Sanu was 100% integrated.
Yeah,
he looked great last night.
That. Yeah, he looked great.
Well, I know you and Trags did a video on that. You can go find that on the CLNS Media YouTube page, or if you're listening on audio, it's a previous Press Pass podcast. But, first try. I thought that was I thought you guys did a good job on that. But I said this before the game, and I'm sticking with it. I don't think either of those guys was 100% immersed in the playbook. I think the whole goal was to get that done during the bye. So I actually think there's room for Sanu to improve his performance beyond what he did last night. So
it was cool to see Sanu, though, because they designed some stuff specifically for him.
Right.
Like, you could see that some of the plays that they were running were designed plays that they knew that Sanu would like, and they knew he would be able to get open on.
And I think I said this on the radio on Saturday that, you reported they've been interested in him since the offseason and more reports going further back. They've coveted this guy for a long time. And, I think they're trying to make up for lost time in some ways with him. So get him and N'Keal Harry, get those guys 100% a part of the offense, rolling good to go. The third thing would be, and this is coming, we found out right when Harry was coming back, he couldn't practice with the first team because they were in game plan mode and he's not playing. You have the bye week. Get Isaiah Wynn some game plan first team offense reps, so you don't have to sit him for a week when he comes back like you do with N'Keal Harry. I don't know if that happens if the bye isn't this week. If they don't have the off week, maybe he plays last night. I'm not sure, but it's like you said, get Isaiah Wynn rolling as quick as possible. I think the way to do that is get him some first team reps while you have the chance here during this bye week. All right, that will do it for Patriots Leftovers. Thanks very much for tuning in. Look, we're doing this again. We did it last week as a one-off, and we got such great response, so we decided to do it again. So if you guys like it, let us know. And I don't know how we would do it after a bye week. Maybe we'll figure something out next week. If not, if you want to see it after the Eagles game, at least for sure, let us know. We can try to figure out something during the bye week as well. Got to shout out the sponsors. Patriots Leftovers is brought to you by betonline.ag. Visit their website and use the promo code CLNS50 for a 50% welcome bonus. It's also brought to you by CBS HQ. Download the CBS Sports app and watch CBS Sports HQ today. All right, we will be back at Gillette tomorrow. You can follow all your coverage on Twitter at Patriots CLNS, CLNSmedia.com. Subscribe to the YouTube page and subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass podcast, wherever you get your podcast. That's an audio version of everything we do. So the videos down at Gillette, this sort of thing, the post-game stuff, it all goes up audio only. So you get all our great analysis without having to look at our faces. It's a win-win. So that's where you can get all our stuff. All right, for Evan Lazar, I'm Alex Barth. Thanks, everybody, for watching and listening. We'll talk to you next time.